Comment below where you are watching from, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the end, because what unfolded in Manila on the night welcoming 2026 changed how many foreigners saw the Philippines forever. Daniel Reyes never planned to become part of a story shared across continents, but the final hours of December pulled him into something unforgettable. As midnight approached, he stood among strangers from different nations, each carrying assumptions shaped by headlines and hearsay. No one expected the city to respond the way it did. Phones were ready, skepticism lingered, and curiosity mixed with fatigue from long travels. Then something unusual happened before the clock struck 12. Attention settled over Manila, not fear, but anticipation so thick it felt shared. Daniel noticed silence spreading through crowds normally loud. Even the foreigners paused. What they witnessed next wasn't just fireworks. It was a declaration, and the night had only begun to speak. Daniel had arrived from Canada 3 days earlier, convinced the New Year celebration would resemble modest gatherings he'd seen in travel vlogs. His friend Maria, a Filipina journalist, warned him that Manila never welcomes a year quietly. He laughed it off, assuming it was pride speaking. As evening deepened, the streets filled with families, vendors, and travelers drifting without maps. Conversations blended languages, yet the mood was unified. Daniel noticed elderly couples beside children clutching sparklers, while tourists checked watches impatiently. The air felt electric, but nothing visible explained it. Fireworks were expected, yes, but not this sense of collective breath-holding. Maria disappeared briefly, returning with a knowing smile. She said nothing, only gestured for him to keep recording. Around them, foreigners began adjusting camera angles, sensing something larger. Daniel's skepticism softened into curiosity. Whatever Manila was preparing didn't feel rehearsed. It felt instinctive, ancient, and deeply personal, as though the city itself was waiting to exhale. When the first explosion cracked the sky, Daniel instinctively ducked, thinking it premature. Instead, cheers erupted, echoing across buildings like a signal passed hand to hand. That single firework did not fade into silence. It multiplied. Colors burst relentlessly, not in scattered intervals, but in waves that refused to end. Daniel checked his phone clock. Midnight was still minutes away. Around him, foreigners exchanged startled looks. Some laughed nervously, others stared upward, mouths open. Maria finally spoke, explaining that this was only the beginning. The fireworks weren't a countdown gimmick. They were a communal release. Each explosion carried frustration, hope, gratitude, and defiance forged over a difficult year. Daniel realized this wasn't entertainment. It was emotional language. The sky became a canvas of memory and intention. With every booming echo, Manila announced itself to anyone listening. The night stretched forward, promising no pause, only escalation, and Daniel felt history unfolding above him. As minutes turned into an hour, the fireworks intensified instead of fading. Foreigners began timing the display, stunned it hadn't slowed. Daniel overheard a German tourist mutter disbelief, while an American couple debated whether this was officially sanctioned. Children laughed without fear, as if accustomed to thunder painted in color. Vendors kept selling food calmly, unfazed by the chaos overhead. Daniel understood then that this was routine, yet extraordinary. Maria explained that Filipinos didn't fear noise welcoming a new year. They believed it chased away misfortune. The louder, the better. Daniel reflected on how restrained celebrations felt back home, where noise complaints often silenced joy. Here, joy demanded space. Fireworks erupted from rooftops, streets, and distant neighborhoods, forming a synchronized rebellion against quiet. The sky refused darkness. Daniel's skepticism dissolved completely, replaced by awe. He realized the night wasn't about spectacle. It was about participation. Every sound declared survival, resilience, and collective hope, broadcast without apology. By the second hour, Daniel noticed something more profound than fireworks. Strangers were smiling at each other without introduction. Foreigners stopped filming constantly and simply watched. The relentless explosions created a shared vulnerability, a reminder that everyone beneath the sky was equal. Maria told Daniel stories of past New Year's when power outages didn't stop celebrations, when storms failed to quiet the tradition. This wasn't defiance against nature, but acceptance of uncertainty. Daniel felt something shift internally. He thought of his own year, disappointments carefully hidden behind routine. Above him, Manila screamed its emotions openly. Fireworks continued with no sign of exhaustion, each blast overlapping the last. Daniel realized the city wasn't counting time. It was erasing boundaries between old and new. Foreigners whispered questions. How long does this last? The answers varied, but none included an ending. Daniel lowered his phone, knowing footage couldn't capture what was happening inside him. This wasn't tourism anymore. It was initiation. A French traveler named Luc approached Daniel, asking if this level of celebration was normal. Daniel shrugged, now unsure what normal meant here. Maria explained that fireworks were only one layer of the night. Families prayed quietly between explosions, making wishes drowned out by sound, yet carried by intention. The contradiction fascinated Luc. Noise and reflection coexisted without conflict. Daniel began to notice small rituals unfolding everywhere. Parents lifting children toward the sky, elders closing eyes briefly, couples holding hands silently. The fireworks didn't distract from meaning, they amplified it. Each explosion punctuated unspoken hopes. Daniel wondered how many dreams were being released simultaneously into the smoke-filled air. The city glowed relentlessly, refusing darkness, as if afraid silence might invite despair. Luc stopped asking questions and simply watched. Daniel realized foreigners weren't just observing Manila. Manila was absorbing them. The celebration made no effort to explain itself. It didn't need validation. It existed completely on its own terms. As midnight finally arrived, there was no dramatic pause. No countdown chant dominated the night. Fireworks were already roaring, making clocks irrelevant. Instead of a single climactic moment, Manila chose continuity. Daniel felt chills realizing the symbolism. The new year didn't begin suddenly. It flowed in seamlessly, without interruption. Maria explained that life here rarely allowed clean breaks. Survival required momentum. Fireworks continued as if to say, keep moving forward. Foreigners who expected a grand finale found themselves inside an ongoing statement. Daniel noticed tears in unexpected places. An elderly Filipino man nearby wiped his eyes quietly while smiling. No one asked why. Emotion was allowed without explanation. Daniel felt his chest tighten, overwhelmed by the sincerity surrounding him. The fireworks didn't celebrate perfection. They celebrated endurance. Every blast honored another year survived. The sky seemed endless, as if the city refused to let hope expire. Daniel understood why people warned him. This night wasn't meant to be understood quickly. Hours passed, yet energy never faded. Foreigners checked phones repeatedly, shocked at the time. Daniel noticed how fatigue surrendered to adrenaline. Maria laughed, saying Manila would sleep later. She spoke of years when fireworks lasted until dawn, when people refused to let joy end prematurely. Daniel felt time stretch unnaturally, like the night itself wanted to linger. Conversations grew deeper. Travelers shared stories of difficult years, job losses, separations, and uncertainty. The fireworks became a backdrop to confession. Daniel realized something profound. The noise created privacy. Personal emotions dissolved into the collective roar, allowing honesty without vulnerability. Fireworks masked tears and laughter equally. Daniel reflected on how silence back home often magnified loneliness. Here, sound created safety. The city wasn't ignoring pain, it was drowning it in hope. Foreigners stopped feeling like outsiders. They were participants now, baptized by noise and color. Manila didn't ask where they came from. It welcomed whoever stayed awake long enough to listen. Near the third hour, Daniel noticed fewer phones raised. People were present now. The fireworks felt less like a show and more like breathing. Inhale, explode. Exhale, cheer. Maria explained that this tradition survived colonization, hardship, and modernization because it belonged to the people, not authorities. Daniel understood the quiet power of that statement. This celebration didn't require permission. It existed because people needed it. Fireworks reflected independence expressed emotionally rather than politically. Daniel recalled conversations abroad that painted Manila as chaotic or disorganized. Standing there, chaos felt intentional, even disciplined in its persistence. The city managed disorder beautifully. Foreigners began laughing at their own misconceptions. Luke admitted he thought the night would feel unsafe. Instead, he felt protected by strangers. Daniel agreed. There was no fear in the noise. Only release. The fireworks continued relentlessly, erasing doubt. Daniel realized Manila wasn't performing for tourists. It was reminding itself that it was still standing, and everyone watching was invited to witness resilience firsthand. As smoke thickened, the sky glowed permanently illuminated, like dawn refusing to wait. Daniel felt strangely energized despite exhaustion. Maria explained that Filipinos believed enduring the night together strengthened communal bonds. Sleep could wait. Togetherness could not. Foreigners began sharing food, drinks, and stories without prompting. Nationalities blurred. Accents mixed. Daniel noticed laughter coming easier, conversations warmer. Fireworks became punctuation marks in dialogue. Every explosion emphasized a point, sealed a memory. Daniel reflected on how many people feared Manila for its noise. Yet here, noise created unity. Silence, he realized, was sometimes more dangerous. Fireworks didn't allow overthinking. They demanded presence. The city forced everyone to stay awake emotionally. Daniel thought of how many New Years he spent distracted by screens. Here, distraction was impossible. The sky commanded attention. The night insisted on participation. Foreigners stopped feeling like observers of culture and became carriers of the experience. They would take this memory home altered. Manila had done its work quietly, loudly, unapologetically, through fire and sound. Around the fourth hour, Daniel felt a strange sadness approaching. Not because the fireworks slowed, but because he knew this experience couldn't be recreated elsewhere. Maria noticed his silence and smiled knowingly. She said people often leave Manila changed after New Year's, though they struggle to explain why. Fireworks continued with stubborn persistence, refusing closure. Daniel realized the night wasn't about welcoming 2026 alone. It was about refusing to let hope expire at midnight. Foreigners discussed returning next year, already nostalgic for a night not yet finished. The city taught patience through excess. By overwhelming the senses, it forced surrender. Daniel felt lighter, as if worries burned off in the smoke overhead. He understood now why Manila celebrated loudly. Silence would allow fear to speak. Noise kept fear out. Fireworks were armor. The city armored itself collectively. Daniel wondered how many generations had relied on this ritual. The thought humbled him. He wasn't witnessing novelty. He was stepping into continuity older than he imagined. Eventually, fatigue crept in gently, not as defeat but as satisfaction. Fireworks still erupted, though spacing widened slightly. Daniel noticed people sitting on sidewalks, leaning against walls, refusing to leave. Maria explained that leaving early felt disrespectful to the night. Endurance was part of gratitude. Daniel admired that philosophy. Back home, celebrations ended when convenience dictated. Here, meaning dictated stamina. Foreigners followed suit, sitting wherever space allowed. Conversation softened. Laughter quieted but didn't disappear. Fireworks continued, now feeling protective rather than overwhelming. Daniel reflected on how the night challenged his assumptions about joy. Joy didn't need moderation here. It needed commitment. The city committed fully, without embarrassment. Daniel realized that witnessing this changed his understanding of celebration itself. It wasn't about precision or spectacle. It was about collective release. Manila didn't celebrate because life was easy. It celebrated because life was hard. Fireworks weren't denial. They were acknowledgement. The sky absorbed everything people carried, and for a while, it carried it back as light. As dawn threatened the horizon, the fireworks gradually softened, not ending abruptly, but fading respectfully. Daniel felt a quiet reverence settle over the group. No one clapped. No one announced the end. The night concluded naturally, like a conversation trailing off after honesty. Maria said that was the most important part. There was no need to declare completion. The experience lived on internally. Daniel looked around at the foreigners, their faces changed, softened. He knew this memory would resurface unexpectedly years later. The fireworks had rewritten something inside them. Daniel realized he would struggle to explain this night to friends. Words would fail. Videos wouldn't suffice. The experience required presence. Manila taught that lesson without instruction. As people finally dispersed, Daniel felt gratitude heavier than exhaustion. He thanked Maria quietly. She simply nodded, knowing thanks weren't necessary. The city had spoken. Those who listened carried the message forward. Fireworks ended, but something else had started. Days later, Daniel noticed how the memory lingered, shaping his thoughts. Back in his hotel room, silence felt unfamiliar. He replayed conversations, laughter, explosions echoing in his mind. He realized the fireworks had become symbolic. They represented permission to feel openly. Manila didn't hide emotion behind politeness. It celebrated it publicly. Daniel reflected on how foreigners often arrived guarded. That night dismantled defenses effortlessly. The noise did the work. Daniel wrote messages home describing the experience, struggling to convey intensity without exaggeration. He knew disbelief would follow. Yet he didn't mind. The truth didn't need validation. Manila existed whether others believed or not. Daniel felt changed, calmer yet more awake emotionally. The night had recalibrated him. He understood why some people return every year. Fireworks weren't addictive. The honesty was. The city had shown him a way to confront uncertainty loudly, together, without shame. That lesson followed him home, long after the smoke cleared. Luke later messaged Daniel, saying the night haunted him positively. He admitted it challenged his ideas of order and control. Daniel agreed. Manila thrived in managed chaos, finding beauty in intensity. The fireworks symbolized trust in collective rhythm. Daniel noticed how many foreigners shared similar reflections online. Awe dominated every account. Skepticism vanished. Manila had won without persuasion. Daniel thought about how narratives collapse when confronted with lived experience. The city didn't correct misconceptions verbally. It overwhelmed them emotionally. Fireworks were argument enough. Daniel smiled, remembering his initial doubt. He appreciated the humility the night taught him. Being wrong wasn't embarrassing. It was liberating. Manila welcomed error and replaced it with understanding. Daniel realized that was the city's quiet power. It didn't demand admiration. It earned it organically. The fireworks welcomed 2026, but they also welcomed outsiders into a shared emotional language. That inclusion mattered. Daniel knew he would measure future celebrations against this night, knowing few would compare. Manila set a standard not through perfection, but sincerity amplified by fire. Weeks later, Daniel still heard echoes during quiet moments. Fireworks had become a metaphor he returned to often. When life felt uncertain, he remembered Manila's refusal to be quiet in the face of fear. He noticed himself embracing noise differently, allowing emotion more space. The night had altered his internal volume. He shared the story cautiously, knowing it could sound exaggerated. Yet listeners sensed authenticity. They leaned in. The experience demanded attention, even retold imperfectly. Daniel realized Manila's power extended beyond geography. It planted courage in those who witnessed it. The fireworks weren't about spectacle. They were practice. Practice in expressing hope loudly, without apology. Daniel felt grateful he stayed awake. Many travelers might have left early, missing the deeper message. Endurance unlocked understanding. Manila rewarded patience. That realization stayed with him. He promised himself to return someday, not as a tourist, but as someone ready to participate fully again. The city didn't need him, but he needed the reminder. Noise could heal. Togetherness could be loud. Hope could light the sky for hours if people chose not to stop believing in it. As months passed, Daniel noticed subtle changes in his decisions. He took emotional risks he previously avoided. He spoke honestly more often. He traced these shifts back to that night. Fireworks had normalized expression. They taught him restraint wasn't always strength. Sometimes strength was release. Manila modeled that unapologetically. Daniel thought about how many foreigners arrived expecting chaos and left understanding structure beneath it. The fireworks followed an unspoken agreement. Everyone contributed. Everyone endured. That cooperation impressed him. It wasn't enforced. It was cultural. Daniel realized culture lived strongest in moments like these, unscripted yet consistent. The city didn't organize the night officially. People did. That collective responsibility inspired him. He began seeking similar experiences elsewhere, rarely finding them. Manila's celebration wasn't transferable. It belonged to its people. Daniel accepted that. He stopped trying to replicate it and instead honored it privately. The memory became a benchmark, reminding him that some experiences aren't meant to be repeated, only respected. The fireworks welcomed 2026, but their deeper gift was teaching him how communities survive together by refusing silence. Daniel eventually wrote about the experience publicly, careful not to romanticize it. He emphasized endurance, honesty, and participation. Readers responded strongly, many admitting their own misconceptions. Daniel felt satisfied. The night continued educating through him. He realized stories carried responsibility. Manila deserved accuracy, not exaggeration. The truth was already extraordinary. Fireworks lasting hours wasn't the headline. The emotional architecture behind them was. Daniel described how foreigners stopped feeling foreign. That detail resonated most. People longed for belonging without performance. Manila offered that effortlessly. Daniel smiled, remembering Maria's quiet confidence. She never tried to impress him. She trusted the night to speak. It did. Daniel understood that confidence now. He stopped trying to convince others of experiences. He let them arrive curious or skeptical. Manila taught him that authenticity didn't require defense. It simply existed. Fireworks were proof. They didn't explain themselves. They exploded. Anyone willing to look up understood. Reflecting further, Daniel recognized the political undertones subtly embedded in celebration. Fireworks reclaimed space, sound, and sky collectively. They reminded everyone present that joy could not be regulated into silence. That realization stayed with him. Celebrations elsewhere felt muted by comparison. Not inferior, just different. Manila's approach demanded emotional honesty. Daniel appreciated how foreigners adjusted quickly. Resistance dissolved when confronted with sincerity. The city didn't argue its worth. It demonstrated it. Fireworks functioned as testimony. Daniel realized this was why the night felt transformative. It wasn't curated. It was lived. People didn't perform happiness. They expressed it raw. The difference mattered. Daniel felt grateful he arrived without rigid expectations. The city rewrote them anyway. He wondered how many foreigners left changed without realizing it immediately. Seeds planted quietly take time to grow. Daniel felt those seeds inside himself. The fireworks ended hours ago, yet their rhythm continued shaping his outlook. Manila had welcomed 2026 loudly, but its echo traveled far beyond one night, reaching into the lives of those who witnessed it and chose to listen fully. Daniel eventually returned to Manila years later, curious whether the magic persisted. He discovered it wasn't about novelty. The spirit remained intact. The city welcomed him like an old conversation resumed. He realized the fireworks were consistent because the people were consistent. Resilience didn't fluctuate annually. It endured. Daniel felt comforted by that realization. The city hadn't changed to impress visitors. It stayed itself. Fireworks welcomed another year with familiar ferocity. Daniel smiled, understanding the deeper lesson now. I wasn't accidental. It was earned through authenticity repeated faithfully. Foreigners continued watching in disbelief, repeating his initial reactions. Daniel felt a quiet pride, not ownership but appreciation. He knew the cycle would continue. Skepticism would arrive. All would follow. Manila didn't need advertising. It needed witnesses. Daniel felt honored to be one. As fireworks erupted once more, he lowered his phone again, choosing presence over documentation. Some moments existed to be lived, not captured. Manila taught him that truth thoroughly, loudly, beautifully, welcoming each new year with the same unfiltered heart. Standing there again, Daniel noticed how newcomers reacted exactly as he once did. Initial excitement, cautious curiosity, then surrender. He smiled, watching disbelief turn into wonder. Maria joined him again, unchanged in her calm assurance. She said nothing, trusting the night. Daniel admired that trust. Fireworks boomed relentlessly, echoing through memories old and new. He realized repetition didn't dull the experience. It deepened it. Each year added context. Each celebration layered meaning. Daniel felt grounded, no longer overwhelmed but fully present. He understood now that all wasn't just surprise. It was recognition. Recognition of shared humanity expressed without filters. The city invited emotional honesty annually, asking nothing in return. Daniel felt grateful for that invitation. Foreigners around him asked questions again. He answered simply, knowing explanations were unnecessary. The night would teach them. Fireworks continued, punctuating the sky with the same message delivered years before. Survive together. Celebrate loudly. Refuse silence. Daniel listened, understanding fully this time, carrying the lesson forward again, knowing it would remain relevant no matter where life took him. As the night stretched on, Daniel noticed his own reaction differed. Awe remained, but comfort replaced shock. He belonged here emotionally now. Fireworks felt familiar, like a heartbeat. He recognized patterns, rhythms, pauses. The city spoke a language he understood. Foreigners leaned on him for reassurance. He offered smiles instead of explanations. The night required experience, not instruction. Daniel reflected on how rare such communal rituals felt elsewhere. Many societies celebrated cautiously. Manila celebrated decisively. That decisiveness protected hope. Fireworks didn't ask permission. They demanded acknowledgement. Daniel admired that courage. He realized why outsiders often misunderstood the city. They expected restraint. Manila offered honesty instead. Daniel felt proud to witness that misunderstanding dissolve repeatedly. The city educated through experience, not argument. Fireworks taught more effectively than speeches. Daniel felt content watching others learn the same lesson. The sky remained alive with color, refusing to darken. The night welcomed another year, but Daniel knew its real work was ongoing. It reminded people how to feel together without apology, a lesson worth repeating endlessly. Later, as fatigue set in again, Daniel embraced it differently. Exhaustion felt earned, not draining. Fireworks continued, though fewer, gentler now. The city seemed to guide the night toward rest respectfully. Daniel felt grateful for that rhythm. Celebration knew when to soften. He sat quietly, reflecting on how many years he might carry this tradition forward mentally. He knew future New Years would feel incomplete without this memory. That realization didn't sadden him. It enriched him. He appreciated the gift. Manila didn't promise happiness. It offered honesty. That distinction mattered. Daniel watched foreigners slowly disperse, faces thoughtful, transformed. He recognized the expression. It mirrored his own from years earlier. The city repeated its lesson patiently. Daniel smiled, understanding now that Manila didn't welcome foreigners to impress them. It welcomed them because openness was instinctive. Fireworks were simply the city speaking its truth loudly. Those who listened carried it forward. Daniel felt honored to be among them again, grounded by familiarity, uplifted by continuity, welcoming another year with clarity forged through shared noise and collective resilience. As dawn approached, Daniel felt a quiet gratitude settle over him. Fireworks faded respectfully, allowing light to return naturally. The transition felt earned. The city rested without regret. Daniel understood now that celebration wasn't escapism. It was preparation. Manila prepared its people emotionally for uncertainty by practicing release. That realization stayed with him deeply. He admired the wisdom embedded in tradition. Fireworks were more than noise. They were rehearsal for endurance. Daniel carried that insight home again. He noticed how it shaped his reactions to stress. He responded louder emotionally, not in volume but in honesty. Manila taught him to confront fear openly. The night welcomed 2026 again, but its influence extended indefinitely. Daniel knew he would never fully leave the experience behind. It lived inside him now. He accepted that with gratitude. Some cities leave impressions. Manila left instruction. Fireworks taught him how to welcome change without hesitation. That lesson remained invaluable. Daniel rested as the city quieted, satisfied, knowing the night had once again accomplished its purpose without explanation, without apology, through fire and sound offered freely to anyone willing to stay awake long enough to receive it. Years later, Daniel shared the story with his children, describing how Manila welcomed a year loudly and together. He emphasized the feeling, not the visuals. He wanted them to understand courage expressed communally. Fireworks became symbols in his storytelling. His children listened wide-eyed, sensing something meaningful. Daniel realized the experience now extended beyond him. It influenced how he raised others. He encouraged emotional honesty, collective celebration, and resilience. Manila's lesson endured generationally. He smiled at that thought. The city didn't know it shaped his family's values, but it did. Fireworks echoed through his parenting choices, his worldview. Daniel understood the ripple effect of authentic experiences. One night reshaped his perspective permanently. That realization humbled him. He felt grateful for curiosity that led him there initially. Skepticism dissolved into respect. He hoped his children would experience similar moments someday. Not necessarily in Manila, but somewhere that demanded presence and rewarded endurance. Daniel knew such places were rare. He treasured the one he found. The fireworks welcomed 2026, but their echo welcomed countless futures quietly influenced by that night of shared awe. Daniel often reflected on how foreigners initially framed the night as spectacle. Over time, he reframed it as ceremony. That distinction mattered. Spectacle intertembrifie. Ceremony transformed. Manila offered the latter unapologetically. Fireworks functioned as ritual, binding strangers temporarily into community. Daniel admired that power. He noticed how many people searched for belonging in structured environments, missing organic opportunities like this. Manila provided belonging without paperwork. Fireworks were the invitation. Daniel felt grateful he accepted it fully. He recognized now that all wasn't passive. It required openness. Those who resisted missed depth. Those who surrendered gained insight. Daniel carried that understanding forward into other experiences. He approached cultures humbly, ready to listen. Manila taught him that approach through noise, not lecture. Fireworks welcomed 2026 loudly, but they also whispered a lesson beneath the roar. Be present. Be honest. Be together. Daniel held on to that quietly. He knew the city would continue teaching it annually, whether foreigners believed the stories or not. Those who arrived skeptical would leave changed. That cycle comforted him. Truth didn't need defense. It needed witnesses. Manila ensured it always had them. When Daniel revisited his original footage years later, he barely watched it. The videos felt insufficient. He understood now that documentation couldn't replace experience. The real transformation happened internally. Fireworks existed as memory more than image. Daniel smiled, realizing that was appropriate. Some things resisted capture intentionally. Manila's new year belonged in memory. He deleted several clips, keeping only fragments. He didn't need proof anymore. He trusted his recollection. That trust signaled growth. The city taught him to value internal truth over external validation. Fireworks validated emotion without requiring evidence. Daniel appreciated that lesson deeply. He noticed how it changed his relationship with social sharing. He stopped broadcasting experiences excessively. He lived them instead. Manila encouraged presence over performance. That influence persisted quietly. Daniel felt grateful for that recalibration. The fireworks welcoming 2026 weren't about showing the world. They were about reminding the people beneath the sky of who they were. Daniel respected that now fully. He carried the reminder forward gently, knowing some lessons speak loudest when remembered silently, long after the noise fades and the sky returns to normal darkness. Daniel realized the night's impact couldn't be measured in hours or fireworks count. It measured itself in emotional recalibration. Manila adjusted his internal compass. He noticed how he valued community differently afterward. Individual success mattered less. Collective resilience mattered more. Fireworks symbolized that shift. No single explosion dominated. Thousands together created impact. Daniel admired that metaphor. He applied it professionally, personally, consciously. Manila's lesson proved versatile. Fireworks welcomed a year, but they also welcomed perspective. Daniel felt thankful for that generosity. He acknowledged the privilege of witnessing such authenticity. Many never experienced it. He felt responsibility to honor it accurately. He resisted sensationalizing the story. The truth was powerful enough. Fireworks lasted hours. Foreigners watched in awe. Those facts stood firm. Everything else lived beneath them. Daniel accepted that complexity. Manila didn't simplify itself for understanding. It invited curiosity instead. Fireworks were the introduction, not the explanation. Daniel valued that distinction. He knew the city would continue speaking loudly every year, whether or not outsiders listened. Those who did carried something meaningful forward. He counted himself among them, quietly changed, permanently grateful. As Daniel aged, he found himself seeking fewer explanations for things that moved him. Manila taught him that emotional truth didn't require justification. Fireworks were excessive, unapologetic, sincere. That sincerity mattered more than logic. Daniel felt peace accepting experiences without analysis. He allowed himself to feel first, understand later. The night welcoming 2026 taught him that order could emerge from intensity. Manila managed chaos with heart. Daniel admired that balance. He applied it internally. He stopped fearing emotional noise. He welcomed it as signal, not threat. Fireworks symbolized emotional permission. Daniel appreciated how one night granted that permission permanently. He smiled knowing Manila would never know the full extent of its influence on him. That anonymity suited the city. It didn't seek acknowledgement. It celebrated regardless. Fireworks welcomed another year again and again, teaching quietly through repetition. Daniel felt grateful to have listened fully the first time. That openness shaped his life subtly but decisively. He carried Manila with him, not as nostalgia, but as guidance. The city lived inside him now, expressed through resilience, honesty, and the courage to be loud when silence threatened hope. Foreigners watched in awe as Manila lit up welcoming 2026, but awe was only the beginning. What they carried home was deeper. Daniel understood that now completely. The fireworks weren't meant to impress outsiders. They were meant to remind everyone present that survival deserved celebration. Hours of noise declared persistence louder than fear. Manila didn't whisper hope. It shouted it into the sky until dawn answered. Daniel felt honored to witness that declaration. He knew the story would continue repeating annually, unchanged, unapologetic. Fireworks would rise again. Foreigners would arrive skeptical. All would follow. Lessons would embed quietly. The cycle would persist because it mattered. Manila welcomed years loudly because life demanded courage. Daniel carried that understanding forward, knowing it would guide him through uncertainty. The night taught him that hope didn't need subtlety. It needed volume, community, endurance. Fireworks embodied all three. As the memory settled permanently within him, Daniel smiled, grateful for curiosity that led him there, for noise that taught him clarity, and for a city that welcomed a year by reminding everyone how to keep going together, no matter how dark the sky once seemed.